Even though I'm likely going to put this video into the Job Corps vlog playlist, this is not an official Job Corps vlog. Today what I'd like to talk with you about is why it's important to talk about Job Corps. Now if you've gone to Job Corps, you know just how horrible of a place it can be, just how damaging it can be to a person, whether it be their self-confidence, their self-worth, their mental stability, or their physical health, or any of those things. But the thing is, if you haven't been to Job Corps, you probably don't know these things. You probably don't know just how bad it can be there. And that is one of the many reasons why it's important to talk about Job Corps. You see, the people who run Job Corps, they don't like it when their students, their trainees, talk about Job Corps to anyone outside of Job Corps. They don't like you filming there. They probably don't like you taking pictures for the most part. And it's not just when you're there. When you leave, they probably don't want you talking about Job Corps either. They just don't want you talking about it at all, because of how abusive the Job Corps system really is to the trainees it's supposed to be helping. I've seen so many Job Corps trainees leave Job Corps worse off than when they came in. Now, that's not always because of the Job Corps system, but oftentimes it can be. One of the things that some of the head Job Corps staff dislike the most is a trainee who's actually very smart, or maybe even smarter than them, or someone who's actually willing to talk about Job Corps with complete strangers or just anyone they know. See, the reason why this is because the Job Corps staff with the most power in Job Corps like to be able to, for the most part, control and manipulate the trainees at Job Corps. At one point in the history of the Job Corps program, it may have been so bad that people still talked about it, but not bad enough to where they didn't talk about it. What I mean by this is, if you saw someone littering on the streets or doing a petty crime or something, you might tell them, hey, you should pick that up. Or if you saw a crime happening to someone else that didn't at all involve you, like someone hitting someone else, or two people getting in a fight or something, you might report them. But if you witnessed a murder right in front of you and the murderer said, you better not say anything, otherwise you're next, then obviously you're not going to tell anyone, because it's so traumatizing that you can't. Now, I don't like comparing Job Corps to witnessing a murder right in front of you. To be honest, it really shouldn't be that bad. But in my honest opinion, Job Corps is so bad that once people leave, they don't want to think about what happened there. They don't want to think or talk about Job Corps at all. Most of them anyway. I mean, of course some people have positive experiences there. From what I know, it's very rare. But if you've gone to Job Corps, once you leave, you know that you don't ever want to think about that again. You don't ever want to talk about it. You don't even want to hear Job Corps advertisements on the radio. And oftentimes it is that bad. Which is exactly why people who are brave enough, people like me, need to talk about it. We need to get the information out about what goes on in Job Corps. There are so many bad things that happen there. There's so much abuse. There is so much stress there that the taxpayers are paying for this program that they don't even know what's going on there. In fact, I bet a lot of taxpayers don't even know that the Job Corps program exists and that they're paying for it. Which is why it's important to talk about Job Corps. Of course, bigger than Job Corps is the military, and taxpayers pay for that. And we don't really know for sure what goes on in there, but it somewhat makes more sense not to talk about that as much, only because in the military they do things a certain way and they probably don't want our enemies knowing how they do things. But the Job Corps program isn't a super important thing at all. You see, that's why it's important for there to be people like me in the world who see something messed up, see something that shouldn't be happening. We say, that's not right. That shouldn't be happening. And then we talk about it. We tell people about it. We let people know, hey, there's this messed up thing happening. This shouldn't be happening. We should do something about it. Because just like with people who have been abused or victimized in many different ways, oftentimes they don't talk about it. They don't talk about the traumatizing things. And Job Corps is kind of similar. Now you might see some people on YouTube making like 1 or 2 videos about their experience in Job Corps, usually for some reason when they're at Job Corps. I don't know how they found time for that, because I was so busy I never found time for that. But it's important to talk about Job Corps after you've left. It's very, very important. Which is why I'd also like to take a moment to thank Trey, if I remember correctly his name was, of the Job Corps 411. He still makes Job Corps vlogs, even though it's probably been years since he's gone to Job Corps. Now, I haven't actually watched most of his videos just yet because I haven't found the time to, but the more people who are talking about their Job Corps experience, the better. That way people can actually have an insight as to what goes on at the Job Corps centers around the country. There are so many of them that there are not nearly enough people talking about what goes on there. I talk about what has gone on at the Treasure Island Job Corps Center in the Bay Area. Trey has talked about the one in St. Louis, if I remember correctly. But that's only one person for 2 different centers. There's so many other centers, and there's little to no one talking about anything about those centers. Which is why, if you've ever been to Job Corps, I highly encourage you to talk about your experience. If you have the time, or if you can find the time, start a YouTube channel. Think about all the things that happen to Job Corps. I know you won't want to think about it. Write it down on paper. That's what I first did. Or type it up on the computer and talk about it. Just let people know what's gone on at the Job Corps centers, because everyone needs to know. I'm sure you've probably heard enough of my rambling. So before I go, there's just one last thing I gotta say. When it comes to talking about Job Corps, I consider everyone who watches my Job Corps vlogs to be very lucky, because when I went to Job Corps, I was the kind of trainee who not only was smarter than most of the staff, but I'm also brave enough to talk about my experiences after I've left Job Corps. But because I was smarter than most of the staff, I was able to gather more information than anyone probably ever has from that center. Anyway, that's it about Job Corps until the next actual Job Corps vlog. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please press like. If you'd like to see more Job Corps vlogs in the future, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.